something that founders should really take to heart when they set out to build something is being super open-minded and agile, because you are going to learn so much and you're going to uncover so many other problems that you didn't know existed in the industry.
Welcome to Kindred Spirits, the podcast that brings you unfiltered conversations about life, work, and everything in between.
Join us as we share stories, spark connections, and celebrate the magic that happens when kindred spirits unite.
Welcome back, everyone. Melissa and I are really excited about today's guest. We had the pleasure of speaking with Kaylee Astle Lieffers, fellow Vancouverite and the CEO and founder of Blanka. Blanka is a platform for private labeling beauty and wellness products, helping anyone launch their beauty brand in under 5 minutes. This conversation covers a lot of different topics, including how Kaylee's challenges in starting her own beauty line inspired her to create Blanka. Hope you enjoyed this conversation, and if you do, please let us know over Instagram or LinkedIn. We would love to connect with you.
Hello. Welcome, everyone, and especially welcome, Kaylee. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to chat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we were excited because I've been following your product for quite some time, and we're super excited to tell us, a little bit about yourself and how it all started. Like, tell us what the inspiration was.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess just at like a very high level, what Blanka is, it's a platform that helps anyone launch a makeup or a skincare line in less than 5 minutes, all through like a streamlined tech platform. I guess like a little bit about myself. I started my career in management consulting, and that's kind of where I fell in love with technology. And I didn't really want to continue on in like the corporate world. So I eventually kind of found my way to the startup world and worked in a number of different startups and scale ups in Canada, many of which were kind of in the e-commerce enablement or marketplace development side of things. I worked for one scale up in Vancouver that really gave me exposure into, working with the likes of Shopify and Wix and WooCommerce. And I kind of just fell in love with commerce as a whole. And then in 2021, I attempted to launch my own direct-to-consumer brand. And that was kind of like the catalyst for starting Blanka, I guess. This attempt was definitely not successful because I was faced with so many obstacles from finding suppliers. There's over 13,000 global manufacturers of skincare and cosmetics. So I had no idea where to start. And then I had to order samples and make sure that they were FDA and Health Canada compliant. And then I had to invest in inventory to meet minimums. Then I had to store all that inventory and get it branded. And then finally, I had to handle the day in and day out of order fulfillment. So like every step of the process was really time consuming. It was really costly. It was really challenging. And needless to say, it just was painful and didn't work out. And so that was kind of like my first paid experience from trying to start a brand. But then as both a consumer and an entrepreneur in the beauty space, I was watching how quickly the industry was growing. It's, said to be recession proof. And there's a lot of numbers coming out that's saying beauty's going to be valued at like 580 billion by 2027. Not to just like rattle off numbers, but the growth really is insane. But what's interesting is that as this industry is growing, it's also evolving. It's no longer dominated by like 9 CPG brands like L'Oreal and Estee. It's becoming dominated by emerging independent brands that are taking hold of the market. And they've captured more than 25% of it. And so, my own paid experience, plus seeing the growth and evolution that was happening, these emerging brands don't have the support systems they need to be successful. And so that was kind of like the starting point for building Blanka, where we're like, well, what if we built technology that makes it easier for these emerging brands to launch their product in market? So yeah, a long answer to your question, but some backstory.
I think, and that's what's brilliant about it, because you took kind of your experience and you're trying to make a difference for other people, right? And other companies that want to, build that. Where does the name come from? I always think of blank canvas. like starting over kind of thing.
You're right. No, that's 50% of it. So it is two meanings. The first is like blank canvas, starting over, starting from scratch, and like for us, we really wanted to build Blanka where it was easy to start something of your own and really put your mark on it. That's why everything is fully brandable. The other term, Blanka with a C in Spanish, which is my second language, it means white. And so that kind of aligns to, again, like a blank canvas or white labeling. And we're essentially like white labeling our private label as a service.
I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've come so far from those days when you were pursuing your own beauty brand to having that light bulb moment where you decided to pivot and instead help tons of others launch their own beauty brands. Did you ever really envision the company reaching the level of success that it has with Forbes recognition and funding? Like, what was that journey like for you?
Definitely not. Like, in no way. We started, my two other co-founders, Adam and Doug, we started this kind of as a side project. Like, the three of us always wanted to build something together. And we have such complementary skill sets. Adam, our CMO, is such a creative and like really owns like the marketing and that piece of the business. And then Doug's our CTO, and he's like an architectural wizard. And so between the three of us, we knew we had this like really powerful kind of trilogy of skill sets, myself being more of like the visioning, ops, and like just like actioning. I'm like very action oriented. So the three of us are just such a great team. But when we built Blank, I was just like, this is a fun project that we're working on the weekends. And then we shipped our MVP, and then all of a sudden it had revenue, and then all of a sudden we needed an employee, and then all of a sudden we're quitting our other jobs. Like, it's not just like you wake up one morning, you're like, I'm going to start a business and it's going to be 20 people and we're going to raise $3 million. Like, it's very iterative. And so like, yeah, to get that level of recognition, it's super cool because for so long, like, I don't know, we weren't really relevant, especially in Vancouver. Like, I'd go to these events and like nobody had heard of Blanka, which is totally fair. We weren't promoting what we were doing. But then because of that, it's like, it's harder to get invited to things, or it's harder to get chosen as like, I don't know, in an accelerator or anything like that. Like, once people know that you're doing something, you're so much more relevant, and it's really cool. But it took a lot of hard work and a lot of rejection to get here.
Mm.
And I like when you say that, because I think people instantly on social media are like, okay, it looks so, you see success by like the photos and stuff. And obviously, as somebody, you worked really, really hard. What was like one thing, if you could look back at something, you're like, this is not working, that you implemented into getting a little bit more traction or partnering with another company? Like, is there anything that was a pivotal moment that started to work that you kind of reflect on to get to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great question. There's so many kind of like small things that really changed for us. I think like a a big learning I've taken with the business is like, we set out to be a tech company, and we're not purely a tech company. We're like a tech plus supply chain company. And like, really, when we built this company, that was not intended. Like, we have an office and we have a facility where we're doing like, we're not manufacturing, but we're doing pretty much everything else. So we consider ourselves vertically integrated SaaS. And I think like my biggest learning on that is just like being very open-minded about what your business can become. Because if you asked me 3 years ago what Blanka would be, I mean, like, in essence, there's similarities, but like functionally how the business operates is very different. And I think that's like something that founders should really take to heart when they set out to build something, is like being super open-minded and agile, because you are going to learn so much and you're going to uncover so many other problems that you didn't know existed in the industry. And so like what that also has meant for us is like the market opportunity has become so much bigger because we understand this industry more, and we now see different ways that our platform can solve problems. So like, I'm way more bullish and excited today than I was even 3 years ago.
So when you were on that journey and things started kind of changing, you weren't necessarily going in one direction for one goal, but you were letting things go the way that, the journey took you. Was it working with customers that really kind of led to those changes? Like, were there specific customers that you worked with and you found out that they needed more from you than what you were planning to provide for them, and that led to the changes? Or kind of what would be the reason behind why you've made all the pivots?
I mean, 100%. I don't think we've made like any drastic business pivots, but definitely the platform has evolved so much over time. And it's evolved based on like the feedback from our customers. So Blanket is product led, which means that a brand, which is what we call our customers, can come on and self-serve. They can choose, what plan they want to be on. They can choose their products. They never have to interact with a team member. And so in order to build like a really good product led platform, and we're still learning, we have not like perfected this by any means, but in order to be successful, even to like the extent that we have, it's about listening to your customers. So I'll give you an example. Like when we first shipped the first iteration of Blanka, it was very lean in terms of functionality. Like you could choose from like, I don't know, 30 products that we had, and you could like publish them to Shopify. But then obviously like the whole point of Blanka is you're private labeling it or you're adding your logo to it. But we had no way of like getting the brand's logo onto the product. They were selling them, but you couldn't see the logo on the product. So it was such a broken process, and people would be like, hey, we need to see the logo on products. And so we had somebody who would spend like 2 hours like manually adding the logo to the product in Photoshop, and then we'd like upload it to their account. It was such a manual process, but like we learned that this was like a core piece of the experience that was missing. And then we did it manually for a while and understood like how that experience should be structured. And now it like today, just so you know how it works, a brand comes on and they can upload their logo, and within 30 seconds, it's rendered on 350 products, like fully automated. But like we had to like listen to those challenges and like understand what our customer was looking for in order to build that out. So it was definitely iterative, and it didn't happen overnight. And it required a lot of like manual work at the beginning to make sure that we were solving the right problems.
Yeah. And like that must be would have been tough because at the early stages, there's always like little fires you have to put out, and like what is most important to spend your energy, right? When you have so much on the go. Um, when you're talking to a brand, can anyone come on to Blanka to promote, or is there specific standards? Like just out of curiosity about that.
Oh my gosh, no, anybody can start their brand with our platform. It's super cool. There's definitely like a certain, like, there's just few archetypes that we see show up time and time again. But my favorite type of person who comes on is like, I've always wanted to have a side hustle. I've always wanted to run a business. And like, and then they find us and they're like, this is exactly what I've been looking for, because our platform is like, we've tried to remove all those obstacles that I had experienced. Like we have no minimums. We have like really low cost to get started. We have amazing products that like every single person loves. So like we're like, those are table stakes for us in the industry and like in what we're building. So we make it super easy. You can literally come on, create an account, choose from hundreds of products, add your logo, and publish it to a Shopify store in like literally the matter of minutes.
Wild. I actually cannot believe how simple it is today for people to be able to start, their own business online, even with products. Like can you imagine like 10 years ago if this kind of thing was around? I was listening to a podcast earlier today, actually, and it was talking about why people should build like a personal brand and an audience before launching a product or an offer. And this just made me think, if somebody did have their own brand or they had a following online and just say in beauty, and they decided, okay, I'm ready to launch a product. This makes it so easy for them to just then step into that without having to put up all the money up front for all the products and, tons and tons of upfront that you would probably have needed even like not even 10 years ago, like 2 years ago, 1 year ago. It's just completely changing the game. Have you gotten that kind of feedback from a lot of your clients that they're just like blown away by this even being available?
I think a lot of people, when they find Blanka, like especially like people who have been looking for a solution, when they do find us, they're like, wow, this is exactly what I was looking for. Like, I didn't know this existed. So that feels really amazing. I think the other piece for us on the education point is like people who didn't even realize this was an option, and then making sure they're able to find us too. Like, what are the search terms they're looking for when they want to start a brand? But yeah, I mean, the level of support and excitement we're getting from the industry has been really positive. I think the beauty industry as a whole is a really interesting one that we play in because it's a massive industry, but it's so archaic and old school. Like the big operators in the industry are behemoths and they don't think about tech and automation the way like they probably should, which is creating opportunity for us. An example I'll give, and I've shared this a few times with folks, but I was at Cosmoprof in Bologna, Italy last year. And Cosmoprof, for those who don't know, for the industry, the beauty industry is like this massive trade show. And you get everything from like these small mom and pop beauty companies to like Olaplex having like a $40,000 exhibit. So you get everything in between. There's like 3,000 exhibitors and over 2 million square feet of exhibitor space. And there was like I was planning out my days at Cosmoprof and like walking and just learning. And there was an area called beauty tech. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go to the beauty tech area because like I want to see what types of innovations being built. And like, of course, this is the biggest trade show in the world. So I'm going to learn so much. And I like beeline over to beauty tech on day one and I like get to the area and it's 6 exhibits and they're all like virtual makeup try on companies. I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Like, this just speaks to how archaic this industry is and how ripe it is for disruption. And I think we're just like one way that we're disrupting the industry.
And like right on. I when I think about what you just said too, is just like I would never someone who just, I love buying product online. I'm such a person. I love all that stuff. But you think about it, I was gonna ask my question, like, what are some of the trends that you're still seeing today that you're like, oh my gosh, how is this still even happening in the industry? And how is Blanka trying to like change the narrative for that besides like what you just mentioned there? But do you see trends that you're still shocked that it's still in there?
I definitely think like the biggest thing that shocks me around the industry is how certain companies are that are really successful get away with having like the worst ingredients possible. That really shocks me because like a lot of times in beauty, it's not about like you don't have to get licensed to sell beauty products, right? You just have to be compliant. And so when you're being compliant, it also is based on like what country you're being compliant with because the United States is a lot more lenient than Canada. So an example like we really wanted to launch a single pen eyeshadow in our catalog. And we exclusively source from North America suppliers. But that still opens us up to United States manufacturers. And so every manufacturer who had single pen eyeshadow had talc in it. And we didn't want talc in our single pen eyeshadow. It took us months to find a manufacturer that had like a really, really clean ingredient list that we felt comfortable with. And that kind of like speaks to, answering your questions. Like, I'm shocked that there's still companies and manufacturers that are working with talc. It's allowed in the US, but like in Canada, it's really, really frowned upon. And B, it's just shocking to me that like we have to work so hard to make sure that we're, sourcing these products. But if anything, I think it showcases to the users that are using our platform and subsequently their customers is like we care so much about the products that we make available. Our vetting process is so rigorous. But I think that is a problem that's a bit more prevalent across the industry. And I think people really need to understand like what they're putting on their bodies.
Mm.
Yeah, I can't
100%.
believe that. Yeah, it seems like most of the mainstream brands are all using products with tons of ingredients that would not necessarily be good for you. I won't go as
Mm.
far as saying bad for you, even though I'm sure that's the case with a lot of them. But, I think with millennials, but especially Gen Z, those brands just aren't going to be able to survive. I feel like people are getting so much more knowledgeable about what you're putting in your body, on your body. Just, every day that goes by, it seems like more and more people are coming into the clean beauty space or holistic living overall. So I guess we'll see what happens.
Totally. I think that's what's really cool about what's happening like in the Korean beauty space, just because K beauty is so like forward looking, and they're the third largest exporter of beauty. And like one product, I'll give you an example of like SPF is a regulated product in the United States, but the US hasn't updated their SPF ingredient list since the 90s. So a lot of products, if you're buying it from the US, is like stuck in the Stone Age. And a lot of folks in the United States are like consumers are looking overseas to like buy from Korea. And so they'll import product in Korea from Korea. And it's a bit of like a gray area whether or not you can actually be importing those products because SPF is like a regulated product. So like there's a lot of gray area in the beauty industry as well. But I do think like the EU and Korea are a lot further ahead than North America in some ways. And so we're definitely looking overseas in specific countries there to get inspiration for like what products we should be launching to make sure that we're ahead of the curve.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Like I remember, I unfortunately I couldn't wear makeup growing up because I had such bad allergies to it. I would just break out. So I
Wow.
remember being, and I'm not aging. Well, I'm not aging myself. We're not saying I'm older, but I'm and like this was early 2000s, or 90s, and it was impossible for me to get wearing makeup because a lot of the brands just we weren't there yet. So I would never just I just dived into where even like starting to put stuff on my face this like 10 years ago because I couldn't find anything because we just weren't there yet. This is 10 years ago. I was able to finally find stuff that didn't have the ingredients in it. And so this is why these platforms are so inspiring for me and make me like tear up. So I'm like, okay, I finally can get involved and I've always wanted to, but I just couldn't because my face was always so sensitive. And so I think that speaks to a lot of people. And, it's such a beautiful, I love the way that we're pivoting into this way where we care a lot about not just what people are buying, but we care about the people that are wearing them and the longevity of wearing it. So you have long-term people buying, like partnerships with people, right? So that's really
Yeah,
cool.
And
that's super cool.
I feel like too, I don't know if it's just a TikTok thing, but like skincare has become so huge now. It's like, I mean, and makeup too. It makes me think like when you're on TikTok and every other video is somebody doing their skincare routine or telling a story while they're doing like a get ready with me makeup thing. Like that whole industry, I feel like in the past couple of years has just completely like absolutely blown up. Like you mentioned, you mentioned that there's so many different players in it. Does it seem like to you there's been a massive boom just in the past couple of years, or is that just me guessing from TikTok?
Fair enough. I think what you're seeing is just like the emergence of those independent like indie brands, right? And leveraging TikTok to kind of get out there because like the opportunity for going viral is so huge in TikTok.
Mhm.
I hosted a dinner in New York back in September with like a variety of emerging beauty brands. All right at the cusp of getting into Sephora or maybe just getting online distribution with Sephora to give you just an idea of scale. And what was kind of consistent amongst all of them was like two things is like, did they have a viral product on TikTok? And were they distributing through Ulta or Sephora? Those were kind of like the success factors for these emerging brands. And so I think it's like super interesting what's happening on TikTok. It kind of goes back to something that you briefly touched on earlier, Maddie. It was just around like the power of community or audience.
Mhm.
And I think that's definitely something that we see with the brands that use our platform is like you need some type of community or audience typically in order to be successful. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a following on social media, but it might be a farmer's market that you go to of an audience that buys from you, or it might be your clients if you're a makeup artist, or it might be your customers if you're a D2C brand that wants to expand into beauty. But I do think like one kind of success factor that we've seen, not only in the brands using our platform, but in emerging independent brands is like the power of community and really like utilizing that to propel your brand forward.
Mhm. And I know you mentioned that one of your co-founders is leading the charge in marketing, but is this something that you have also used with the building Blanka? Were you able to kind of garner a community around it or an audience? And did that help with your growth?
Our growth largely was organic. And this is more of a function of we were a bootstrap startup without capital. Like we just didn't have resources to put into like social media and like ads or anything like that. Um, Really our growth kind of came through being a really top performing app in the Shopify app ecosystem, having good content that we wrote early on that was informative and very targeted. And then like strong partnerships that kind of started to build up organically over time. Now we're starting to activate more of like a marketing kind of engine, so to speak. So like we're starting to build on the social elements, like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, and starting to build out some other areas like content marketing, like committing to that versus just writing random blogs like we were before. We've definitely taken a more active approach to our marketing when before it was just like do what we can amongst all the other things that we're doing, including all the firefighting and all those
Yeah.
things that come with starting a company.
Yeah. And I think that's how it kind of works, though. You kind of dip your toe into what picks up, right? You can't just do one continuous thing, especially with this, all the like competition, all the platforms. It's overwhelming just to focus on one thing, right? So you're super
Oh,
active on
yeah.
LinkedIn, though.
Yeah, I find like LinkedIn's a really great way for me to, just continue to update my network on like what we're building. And people are so helpful on LinkedIn. Like the opportunities that come through LinkedIn, and now like we obviously track like the inbound traffic to our website. We get so much traffic from LinkedIn to Blanka. And so it's a powerful tool. And so
Yeah.
I'm obsessed. Yeah. And so I try and be active when I can on there.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna hope my boss doesn't listen to this, but that's what I get on your website most of the time. Like I'm working and it'll pop up. I'm like, I'll see what's up there. And a couple to my sister. I'm still working, but it's still like it's good because people are strolling. But no, I love that. I think LinkedIn's come like leaps and bounds from where it was a year ago, even a year ago, right? I remember when I started LinkedIn 10 years ago, I thought it was so foreign for me, like so random, but now it's like my lifeline, right? It's
Yeah.
a lot of people's lifeline. So,
Yeah. I love
um,
it.
me too. I really am curious because this is kind of the questions we always like. So you did not realize it was going to get this big, and obviously you just mentioned a couple of new things. But where do you see like going in the next couple of years? Like, wanted to, where's the next couple of years look for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think last year, 2023 was a really uh, kind of game-changing year for us because it felt like we didn't come out of stealth mode. We were never in stealth mode really, but because of, having a really successful seed fundraise, that got really great media and we got some other really great earned media, we're kind of on the radar now. Not just like from like the startup space, but even from like the beauty tech space. And so it's cool to have like that foundation established. We have an amazing team hired up. So really 2024, we're super focused on growth and experimentation. We've built out like a marketing function, a partnerships function, sales is coming through, and then a success function to kind of tie it all together with what's in our pipeline. I'm really excited about seeing what type of growth we can activate now that we have all that foundational stuff set up. For us, we're really focused on working with larger and larger brands over time and helping them bring really high quality, amazing beauty products to market. And that'll continue to be our focus over the next few years. Um, and it kind of just feels like right now we're just getting started. So I think there's a lot to come in the next few years.
Exciting
Oh yeah.
stuff. Okay, so I know we're running out of time here, and you have offered a lot of great advice already, but I want to just touch on if there's any other advice you have for aspiring entrepreneurs, maybe in the beauty space or in the tech space, any lessons or principles that you'd like to share that you think might help somebody, or yourself if you were talking to yourself a couple years back.
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally from the beauty space or anybody that wants to get started, our platform's like the perfect place to do that. Not only do we have this like massive catalog of high quality vetted products that can be sold virtually instantly, we also can handle everything up to like custom formulation at really low minimums. And so there's kind of a shameless plug for Blanka's platform there. And then I guess on the tech side of things, we briefly touched on it earlier, but just around like getting product to market. And if you have an idea, just running with it. I think people get so scared that their idea isn't going to be big enough or it's not good enough or what have you, but you just don't know until you start building. And when you start building, you learn so much more about an industry. So I can't emphasize how important it is to just like take the leap of faith and do it and try and get an MVP to market as quickly as possible. Like you don't need to build and get developers. Like there's so many no code, low code alternatives out there. And had I been a little bit more open-minded about like what our MVP could look like, we probably could have gotten it to market and gotten to revenue a few months faster. And so that's a huge learning for me and something that I always try and share with other founders who might be inkling on an idea.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like a lot of people get kind of stuck in the planning stage of things sometimes. And like, I love your advice because it reminds me to live in the present and just take those small steps to actually go towards, like you said, the MVP instead of like planning out your business for 6 months or something and then never out doing any actual real work on it.
Totally. Writing like a 30-page business plan and like not actually doing any of the work. Like don't do that. Just don't do it.
No, I still laugh about this. When we started this podcast, my first podcast, it was on my phone in Barbados. There's monkeys in the background. And somebody on the phone asks me if I want a rum punch. And I posted it and it went viral, but it was just so raw. And I was just like, looking back, it's a little bit embarrassing. But what you said, like, I don't think I would, you just have to take little steps, get those butterflies moving in your stomach because you're never going to get it right the first time. You just have to learn.
Totally. You just have to learn. And I hope you said yes to the rum punch.
Oh, I did, which my boyfriend's like, oh, Melissa, you can't promote drinking on fine.
If you're a founder, you need a rum punch every once in a while.
So that's a good segue. The podcast, as you know, is called Kindred Spirits. And the name was actually inspired by a quote that we love. So we like to ask every guest. The quote says, to discover a kindred spirit is to find your heart in the heart of a friend. So we'd love to ask you, how do you know when you have found a kindred spirit?
That's a great question. I feel like the way I think about that is probably like my support functions that I have. And I rely a lot on my, whether it's my family, my friends, my founder circle, all play different roles in my life. I think the one that really kind of like comes to mind when you talk about kindred spirit is like the founder community that I've developed. And it's kind of happened organically with female founders that are usually at kind of a seed or a Series A stage. And I have all these like mini WhatsApp and text groups with women across Canada who I kind of lean on for different things. And I think what's so cool is that like what starts as like a professional relationship has like elevated into these really powerful personal relationships. And now like, I don't know where the line's drawn. Like we're going to do massages on the weekend, but then we're always talking about work or like we're going to Mexico together. So like, it's really cool that I feel like I have this community. And I think that has been like, if not the biggest success factor for me when it comes to like, getting advice or making meaningful introductions or just being a sounding board when I need it. So that's kind of what I think of when you guys bring up kindred spirit.
That's amazing. Love that. Yeah, Melissa, any last questions?
No, really, we've been so helpful. I think this is going to be such a powerful podcast for everyone out there that's starting to either try again or, have a good foundation of understanding of that, just getting started. And we're really happy that you came on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting with both of you. And yeah, I'm really excited to hopefully like just share even one small nugget of wisdom with your community.
Yeah, no, this has been awesome. Before we forget, where can people find you and Blanka if they'd like to connect with you further?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Kaylee Astle Lieffers on LinkedIn, and then Blanka brand, BlankaBrand.com. And I shared with both of you guys a promo code for anybody who wants to do some ordering for products on the platform and get started. We have like a free trial, and then there's a code to order some samples and stuff like that. And Pesto starting a product line.
Yes. Thank you so much for the code, by the way. Code for anyone listening is Kindred Spirits 10 at checkout. So that's really awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
For sure. Thanks for having me.